Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first lesson from Yanau explaining the fundamentals of the SAT English exam. This course will cover all of the different lessons that you might find in the SATs, in the Egyptian SAT, in the ACTs, because fundamentally we are talking about the basis of the English language and the kinds of questions and structures that might come from these kinds of questions. So, the very first topic that we'll be covering is commas. And because commas is a very large topic covering many different parts, we are going to be taking it part by part. And the very first part that we'll be talking will be the function of commas for connecting clauses. So, at first we need to understand, what is a comma, because there's a lot of different uses for commas. And I'm sure that many of the people watching now already know many of the functions. You may recognize that commas can be used for making lists, for, connecting clauses as we're taking today. It can be used for making non-essential clauses. It can be used for making appositives, for, starting a sentence, for many different aspects. But fundamentally, we need to take each one piece by piece. And you might notice that even though many of you know a lot of the uses of the commas, many of the people can't actually identify all of the different uses of them. Because we use it normally in our English language, we read it when, we're reading a book or seeing and we know it. But if you try to separate it from the rest of the sentence or identify exactly the use of each, we might find that it's a little bit more complex than what you might imagine. Because, like I said, there are many different uses. So in this lesson, we're going to be focusing on one in particular. We are going to be talking about its use in connecting or separating, based on how you look at it, independent clauses. Now, it has other uses. It can even connect, in some cases, dependent clauses and so on, but I want to focus this session entirely on connecting or separating independent clauses. Let's try a very simple question. Look at this sentence here. I went to the store, period. I bought some apples, period. As you can see from this, these are two very, very simple sentences. But as you can see, are these two sentences related? Well, the answer is yes. Where did that person buy the apples from? Well, obviously, he bought them from the store. And why did that person go to the store? Well, they probably went to the store in order to buy some apples. So how can we use a comma in order to connect these two sentences? Now, before we go into that, we need to understand, first of all, what is a clause? Because this is going to be some terminology that we'll be using in all of our lessons, and we need to understand it really, really well. Clauses are, you could say, parts of sentences. And at the same time, they can be a sentence unto themselves. What does that mean? Well, let's look at this. I went to the store. This is a clause. It has, one key part of the sentence, and it's enough to make a sentence. It has a subject, it has an object, or a predicate, or however you want to put it, and it ends with a period. It is a fully functioning sentence. It is a clause. But since it is a clause that is able to make a sentence, we are going to call this an independent clause. An independent clause. So what does this mean? It means that the clause is able to make a sentence on its own. Later on, not in this lesson, we will be learning about clauses that can't stand on their own in terms of sentences. Now let's look at this. We have two independent clauses. I went to the store, period. I bought some apples, period. Now, independent clauses do not have to make a sentence. You can have multiple independent clauses in one sentence. How do we do it? Well, we connect it with a comma. So let's look here. Here we have four different choices. I went to the store, I bought some apples, was a comma. I went to the store, but I bought some apples. I went to the store, and I bought some apples. I went to the store, semicolon, and I bought some apples. So what is the right answer here? Well, one of the rules of connecting two clauses is that we always have to have, number one, a conjunction, and number two, a comma. You need both of them. So if we look at answer A, we'll find out, hey, does this have a conjunction? Does it have a word that connects the two? Well, the answer is no. So we can eliminate answer A. In answer D, it doesn't have a comma, it has a semicolon. Now you might wonder, what exactly is the use of the semicolon? This is a much more complex tool that we will be using. We don't have to worry about it for now. Let's eliminate it. So what are we left with? We are left with answers B and C. In order to answer which one is right, you need to consider which one is the more relevant conjunction. We have two conjunctions here, but and and. Now here's a question. Is the buying some apples, is that something that you normally do at the store, or something that you rarely do at the store? If it's something that you normally do at the store, we're going to pick and. If it's not something that you do at the store, as in it would be something strange, you would put but. Like, for example, if you said, I went to the store, but I didn't buy anything. In this case, since you normally buy apples at the store, we can eliminate answer B, and we can go with answer C as our answer. I went to the store, comma, and I bought some apples. We have connected two independent clauses. I went to the store, I bought some apples, two completely independent clauses. We connected them with a comma and a conjunction. And this conjunction is and. There are many conjunctions, we will take them later, about many of the different conjunctions that are available that can be used. So let's understand this a little bit more. Any kind of sentence, you need a conjunction. So what are the conjunctions? Well, let's see. You have conjunctions like and, but, so, to, if, because, and many others. I'm not going to cover a full list right now. I don't know if there is even a full list. But ultimately speaking, these words represent the conjunctions that we use. Conjunctions that we use in order to connect what? Connect clauses. Now we need to understand a key point here is that not every use of and must be using it as a conjunction. Let me give you an example of using and where it's not a conjunction. Similar sentence to before. I went to the store to buy apples and I don't know, grapes. I went to the store to buy apples and grapes. Am I connecting clauses? No, I'm just saying I bought this and this. In this case, and here is not a conjunction. The same thing with all of the other conjunctions. A conjunction only exists when it's connecting clauses. So you can't look at every and every but and every so and say, hey, I need to use a comma because I'm connecting clauses. And this is a critical thing to note when you're dealing with writing with the SAT or the ACT or the ESAT or whatever you're learning, because they will try to trick you. You will find sentences filled with words that can be conjunctions, but you need to be able to separate between whether they are or whether they aren't. So let's cover some key do's and don'ts of clauses. Connecting clauses with commas must always have a conjunction. So always have it. If you're doing it in the writing, you need to add the conjunction. If you're doing it with, choosing the correct answer, you need to make sure that there is a conjunction. Or alternatively, if you want to figure out what a comma is doing, look for a conjunction. If you can find one, then it's probably connecting clauses. If you can't find one, then it's probably not connecting clauses. It might be doing something else. Number 2 is that we need to make sure that the clauses are related. Take, for example, I went to the store, period. And then I say, for example, I went home. These aren't technically related. Like if I said, but I went home or and I went home, it doesn't really make sense. These two are not connected. You want clauses that are connected based on whether they relate to each other. If it's I went to the store and then I bought something, or I went to the store and there I met my friend, those are connected. But if you have two entirely unrelated clauses, then you just write each of them as different sentences. Finally, we need to consider the role that the comma is playing in the sentence. Just because we see a comma, just in the same way that just because we see an and, does not mean that it's connecting clauses. Consider its role and consider what it's doing. On the flip side, don't use a comma without a conjunction. If you have connecting a clause, it must be, you have to put a conjunction. You have to find a conjunction. And if you can't find one, well, like I said, it's probably not connecting clauses. Use a conjunction without a comma, okay? Don't do that as well. If you have an and, like for example, as we had before about I went to the store and I bought some apples, well, don't have and as a conjunction and then forget to put the comma. And then finally, don't worry about more complex grammatical tools like the semicolon and the em dash. These will come later. Don't worry about them. My advice for people beginning in the SATs and these kinds of exams is ignore the more complex things. The basic tools will cover you towards, like, let's say the first 80%. The rest we will get to later. My advice is ignore them. Don't worry about them. Commas constitute the vast majority of the English language conventions and the vast majority of the questions that you will find. So let's try a more complex question now, shall we? This question is more typical of a question that you'll find on the SAT exam, because you're not going to find questions that are like, Ahmed went to the store and he bought some apples. No, it'll look something like this. Detroit natives Timothy Paul and Nicole Lindsay have combined their two passions, Detroit and beekeeping, to improve the health of their city's flowers and other vegetation. In 2017, the couple converted a vacant lot in the city into an blank. In the years that followed, they acquired 9 additional lots and established more than 35 hives. So here we have a very straightforward question about commas and connecting clauses. And one thing that I would always advise people, not just in this type of question, but in all SAT questions, is ignore irrelevant details. See this part in the beginning? This doesn't matter. In fact, most of the sentence, most of the thing doesn't matter. It's obvious when we look at the answers, when we have apiary, comma, apiary and, apiary, comma, and, that we're dealing with connecting clauses. And so the question is, what do we need in order to connect two independent clauses. The first independent clause is the couple converted a vacant lot in the city into an. That is the first independent clause. Second independent clause is in the years that followed, they acquired 9 additional lots and established more than 35 hives. So what is the rule of connecting clauses? Rule number 1 is a comma, right? So we can immediately eliminate all the ones that don't have commas. And what's rule number 2? Rule number 2 is conjunction. Let's see. Does B have a conjunction? No, it doesn't. What do we have left? D. D is our answer. Into an apiary, comma, and in the years that follow, they acquired 9 additional lots and established more than 35 hives. The point that I want to show is that even in complex questions, choosing the correct answer is very, very simple affair. As long as you figured out what the question is. If you narrow it down to it's connecting a clause, the answer will be super easy. Now the trick is then narrowing that out, but that will take practice, and we'll focus on that later on. So here we come at the end, and we have learned some core ideas about commas and connecting clauses. Many of you might already be familiar with these. These are a lot of times very basic sentences, things that you've learned already in school. We're not covering something unique and groundbreaking, but it's good to have these fundamentals in mind, and it's good to keep keywords that we're going to be using a lot later on. We are going to be talking about clauses a lot. It's going to be mentioning it constantly. We're going to be talking about conjunctions a lot. We're also going to be talking about other terms that are going to be relevant, like syntax, right? We need to get used to these terms, and we need to be able to use them, because later on when we take other things in commas, like for example, the non-essential clause, we need to be able to be familiar with it, and we need to be able to use it in the proper way. We need to be aware of where and when conjunctions are being used. And the final thing, but this is a more complex topic, once again, we will take later, is syntax, as in, does it make sense? Is it better English and better reading and better writing to see these sentences connected or not? These are going to be some key terms that we're going to be revisiting over and over again, so please make yourself familiar with them. Clauses, conjunctions, syntax. We're going to be learning a lot of vocabulary relevant to the SATs moving forward. So here we've taken one of the first and most basic uses of the comma, but we are not going to stop at this. In the next lesson, we're going to take another use of the comma until we finish all of the key parts of the commas and make sure that we understand all of the fundamental uses. Thank you all for joining me. I wanted to mention that we are now offering our services through yanau.net. If you have any questions, please contact us at info@yanau.net, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. We will be offering online teaching in order to go over these in a very direct way, where we'll be working with you online, trying to explain each of these fundamental concepts, answering any questions that you have, practicing many, many questions, and using a lot of different tools in order to make sure that you have all of the ability to learn all of the topics in the best way possible. If you're interested, please visit us. We'd love to see you there. Thank you all, and I will see you all in the next lesson.